The email subject line just said effective immediately. That was it. No hi Amanda, no lead-in, no warning. I opened it at 9:17 a.m., still chewing a half-stale blueberry muffin from the break room. My screen blinked once, then froze. When it unfroze, my entire Outlook account was deactivated. Slack too. I blinked, swallowed dry muffin, and stared at the blank screen. That was how 12 years of my life ended. Not with a conversation, not even a Zoom call, just digital execution by HR's finest finger-clicking weasels. I don't remember standing up. I don't remember packing my desk. I must have done it because suddenly I was in the elevator, holding a box with my dead succulent plant, my company-issued laptop, and a mug that said, I survived Q3. Spoiler alert, I didn't. As the elevator doors shut, I caught a glimpse of Marcy from accounting pretending not to see me. Always waves? Not today. Eyes straight ahead like she was afraid I'd turn into a contagious disease. The HR rep escorting me down, the one with a nervous smile and a purse that cost more than my rent, offered me a pamphlet titled Navigating Career Transitions. I wanted to shove it somewhere her collagen hadn't reached yet. Departmental restructuring, the termination letter said, as if I hadn't built the damn department. As if I hadn't worked through 2 Christmases, 1 basement flood, and the great server meltdown of 2018 while half the team was vomiting from a bad office potluck shrimp tray. But sure, restructure me right out the door. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't even ask questions. Maybe that's what pissed them off most. I just nodded like a corpse and left with my mouth zipped and my spine straight. Quiet women terrify them. They always have. And listen, I get it. We're probably used to these stories by now. Cold firings, shady boards, corporate restructuring my ass. But trust me, this one's different. I'm not here to trauma dump. I'm here to reveal. And if you've ever been thanked with pizza instead of a raise, or trained a guy who ends up becoming your boss, or got fired while carrying a baby shower gift for the receptionist, then yeah, you're gonna wanna hear this one. So take 2 seconds, hit that subscribe button, and give a like. It actually helps the team keep digging up stories they'd rather stay buried. And hell, it'll make my ex-CFO real uncomfortable. That alone's worth it. Anyway, you'd think getting booted like that would be the worst part, but it wasn't. It was what happened next. That weird limbo where your calendar suddenly goes blank. You wake up on Monday and realize no one's waiting for you. No passive-aggressive per my last email, no back-to-back Zoom calls, no microwaved fish in the break room. Just silence. Empty inbox, no ping, no identity. I spent the first 3 days in the same sweatpants, rage-watching Chopped and wondering if I could have fought harder. Should I have lawyered up, screamed in someone's face, but what good would that have done? I'd signed the NDA. I'd taken the handshake and the sad little HR is here if you need to talk email. I was a clean kill. The truth is I gave them everything. My time, my loyalty, my ability to keep a million balls in the air while smiling like the building wasn't metaphorically, and sometimes literally on fire. I was the one who fixed payroll when their new system crashed. I was the one who stayed calm when a vendor threatened to sue over a clause someone else ignored. But none of that showed up in their spreadsheets. I wasn't a cost center or a line item. I was just extra, disposable. And maybe if it ended there, I'd be telling this story over boxed wine to a friend on the porch. But it didn't end there. Because 6 days later, an email landed in my inbox. Not from them, from a third-party liquidator. The subject line, office equipment surplus sale first come, first serve. At first, I deleted it. Then I undeleted it. Then I clicked. Turns out they were offloading a bunch of old monitors, chairs, keyboards, docking stations, your typical end-of-quarter junk sale. And laptops, dozens of them. Decommissioned, the listing said. Hard drives wiped and reset. I rolled my eyes. I knew who'd done the wiping. Probably Blake, the IT intern who once accidentally sent out a company-wide virus by clicking a phishing link labeled free pizza coupons. Maybe it was bitterness. Maybe boredom. Or maybe some stupid part of me just wanted a piece of that place back, even if it was battered plastic and dead pixels. So I bought one of the laptops, paid $60 and scheduled a pickup. I told myself I'd flip it on eBay, quick profit, call it severance. But when I booted it up and saw a single file on the desktop, budget plan Q4, XLSX, I felt something tighten in my chest, curiosity, followed by something else. That feeling you get when you realize the story isn't over, not even close. Unemployment feels like being underwater in a tub with the faucet still running, just a slow, dull roar in your ears, and no one checking if you're still breathing. The days started blending, sloshing around in coffee mugs and half-hearted job applications. I submitted my resume to 23 companies in the first week. 22 sent automated rejections. The other one ghosted me after the second interview, right after they smiled and called me overqualified, which is just corporate for you, remind us of our own mediocrity. My LinkedIn feed turned into a circus of forced positivity, laid off today but grateful for the memories, with a boomerang selfie holding a branded water bottle. New chapter begins with a selfie in gym clothes. One guy even posted a time-lapse video of himself crying, set to fight song. I watched it 3 times, not for inspiration, just to see if he meant it. People texted, mostly well-meaning friends from the before times. You'll bounce back. This could be a blessing. Use this time to rediscover yourself. Easy to say when you're still collecting direct deposit. I smiled politely at my phone, set it down, and spent 3 hours watching a raccoon crawl through a drive-through window on YouTube. My apartment started shrinking. The walls breathed at night. The couch developed a permanent impression in the shape of my shame. I stopped answering calls. I started forgetting what day it was. Time was measured in DoorDash orders, and how long I could wear the same hoodie without smelling like expired cheese sticks. Then came the liquidation email. It landed in my inbox on a Thursday, right after I got denied unemployment for ticking the wrong box on a form that was written like it had been translated from Sanskrit by a drunk raccoon. The subject line read, "Surplus inventory sale, all items must go." I almost deleted it on reflex. But something, it might have been spite or maybe just boredom with a side of masochism, made me click. Scrolling through the listing felt like walking through a digital garage sale of my old life. My favorite desk chair, still scuffed from where I kicked it during budget meetings. The overpriced ergonomic keyboard that never worked properly. A framed motivational poster from the bathroom with a cat clinging to a tree branch. Hang in there. The same cat probably outlived my severance package. And then I saw it. Dell Latitude 5590 wiped and factory reset $60. I stared at the listing for a long time. I knew exactly which model it was. That was the laptop I had replaced 6 months before I got canned. It ran hot, the fan wheezed like it had bronchitis, and the R key stuck like it owed someone money. But still, it was mine once. My fingerprints had probably rubbed half the paint off the trackpad. Might as well get something back, I muttered, clicking purchase. When I picked it up, the warehouse guy didn't even glance at me. Just slid the box across the table like I was some stranger who hadn't spent more nights than she can count in that office, ordering pad thai at 10 p.m. while building contingency plans for crises they never saw coming. I took it home, put it on the kitchen table next to a wine-stained coaster and a half-eaten bagel from 3 days ago. Plugged it in. Booted it up. It opened slow, like it was waking from a coma. The desktop background was just the generic Windows blue, and one lone file stared back at me. Budget Plan Q4. I snorted, of course. They couldn't even wipe a damn hard drive properly. Classic Blake. I almost deleted it on site. Almost, but I didn't. 'Cause something about that name, it pulled at me. Like a splinter you can't see but keep touching anyway. Budget Plan Q4. Just some dusty Excel file, probably full of petty numbers and formulas no one but me ever bothered to understand. I opened it. It started innocently enough. A few budget lines, projections, expense categories, but there were anomalies. Vendor codes I didn't recognize, payment dates that didn't align. $12,300 line item marked Wellness Initiative External Consultant, Q4 only. I hovered over a cell and saw a note, invoice hash 4817 per ML approval. ML, the CFO's initials. Another note, do not discuss in shared folder sent via private chain. The hairs on my arms stood up. I minimized the file and clicked around the desktop. There was a hidden folder. Not hidden as in encrypted, just lazily shoved inside a subfolder labeled Department X Internal. And inside that, scanned PDFs, contracts, wire receipts, Excel sheets with names that sounded like placeholder variables, Alpha Vendor, Echo Solutions, Zenith Flow. I opened one, a consulting invoice for $19,750 from a company I'd never heard of, signed off by the CFO. Something coiled in my gut. I didn't know what I was looking at yet, but I knew this much, it wasn't good, and someone hadn't just forgotten to wipe a laptop. They'd left the door wide open, and I was already stepping through. I sat there for what must have been 10 minutes just staring at the open spreadsheet like it might bite me. Budget Plan Q4, 3 words that sounded like corporate oatmeal, bland, overprocessed, and destined for the trash. But this wasn't oatmeal, this was off. It started with something small, an adjustment entry for a vendor I'd never seen in all my 12 years. Alpha Consulting. Vague, bland, suspiciously non-Googleable. The line item read, Culture Optimization Services Q4 only, budgeted at $85,000. Billed, approved, paid. Here's the thing, our culture budget never cracked 20 grand for the year. I remember fighting tooth and nail just to get the holiday party catered by something better than Costco meatballs. I had to host a PowerPoint titled Why Morale is Cheaper Than Turnover. It had memes, it had graphs, and it still didn't work. They gave us Punch and a Spotify playlist made by Karen in legal. But here on this quietly discarded laptop was a ghost company billing us 4 times that for what? Mood lighting and a PowerPoint. I scrolled down. That's when the names started popping up. Not real names, just placeholders. Zenith Flow, Echo Tech Solutions, Blue Sale Advisory, all with slick invoice numbers. All with nice, round payments, $19,500, $24,000, $31,100. No deliverables, no documentation. Just line items, greenlit by the same initials over and over. ML, Martin Laird, our CFO. I felt a crack of something in my chest, not quite fear, not yet. Just the beginnings of unease. Like that moment when you realize your house is too quiet, that something is breathing on the other side of the door. I closed the spreadsheet and poked around. There was a folder marked internal. I double-clicked. It was empty, or so I thought. Old habit kicked in. I opened the directory tree and checked folder properties. 2 GB of data. Hidden, bingo. I unhid the contents. Up popped another folder, Department X internal. My hands went cold. I clicked. The first thing inside was a PDF labeled Q4 Wellness Initiative. It was a scanned invoice from Alpha Consulting. Logo in the corner. No address. Billed for mindfulness implementation and strategic realignment. $19,750. Signed by Yep ML. The second document was a wire transfer receipt. Wells Fargo account. Recipient, ZFL Holdings LLC. No explanation. The third file was a copy of a W-9 form with a home address listed. I Googled it. A beachfront property in Naples, Florida, owned by Gregory Laird, Martin's brother. I sat back in my chair. My apartment felt smaller suddenly, like the walls had leaned in to listen. The refrigerator clicked behind me and I jumped like someone had slammed the door. I wasn't supposed to see this. This wasn't a mistake. This was carelessness. The cocky kind that creeps into a system when people think no one's looking, when they've buried enough bodies that they stop checking for footprints. My first instinct was to shut the laptop. Pretend I never opened it. Pretend I didn't see that budget line, that Florida address, that $85K, that web of fake consultants and smiley little invoices. But I didn't, because I remembered every time I'd been asked to tighten the budget, every time someone told me we can't afford maternity coverage this year, or let's pause the 401k match for a quarter. Every time I was asked to make something out of nothing while they were handing out free money to their golf buddies with names like Ecotech and Blue Sail. The pieces started clicking. One invoice here, a consulting agreement there. Quiet, harmless unless you knew what to look for. And I did. That was the mistake, their mistake. I left the dirty dishes in the sink and figured no one would ever come back to the house. But I still had the keys, and I was hungry. Not for revenge, not yet, but for truth. I created a new folder, labeled it Puzzle Pieces, and I started dragging files in. Each one a breadcrumb, each one proof that something rotten had taken root, deep, wide, and smug. I didn't know where it led, but I knew where it started, right here, with one file, one mistake. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was scared, not yet. I didn't sleep because for the first time in weeks I felt like myself. Not the shell I'd become post-termination, soaked in self-doubt and soy sauce from too much takeout, but the version of me they used to rely on. The one who caught accounting errors at 11:48 p.m. with nothing but a Red Bull, a migraine, and a hunch. The one who knew when a vendor code didn't smell right. I printed out the invoices, yes, printed. I needed to see the whole picture, laid out on the floor like a crime scene board. My living room carpet turned into a battlefield of paper. I started grouping by date, vendor, and amount. I highlighted the recurring names. Alpha Consulting, Zenith Flow, Ecotech Solutions. I connected them to the wire receipts, then the fake addresses, then the overlapping tax IDs. It was like watching mold spread under a blacklight. Most of the vendors weren't vendors at all. They were LLCs, many registered to PO boxes or single-family homes in states with lax registration requirements. Delaware, Wyoming, Nevada. The real cherry? One LLC, Harbor Oak Strategies, was linked to a payment of $47,300 for executive coaching, and its mailing address was a condo in Jacksonville Beach. Owned, according to Zillow and a public property database, by Derek Mihalski, otherwise known as Martin Laird's brother-in-law, the same one who bragged at last year's holiday party about his crypto startup and whose business card just said visionary. And then there was the $85,000 invoice. My personal favorite, Q4 Mindfulness Culture Reset Program, it read, from Echo Ascend Advisors. No phone number, no website. The invoice was approved via email, supposedly after a presentation on neuro-leadership strategies. I searched our archives. No such presentation was ever scheduled. The approval note simply read, per ML, process this quietly. No shared folders. Process this quietly. I clipped that phrase and slapped it dead center on my corkboard, underlined in red. I started creating a timeline, nothing fancy, just a running Word doc with dates, amounts, and the fake entities listed alongside any internal approvals. I color-coded payments by size. I added notes on repeated patterns, amounts just under $50,000, which I knew from experience could be processed without secondary approval from the audit committee. Clever. It wasn't just one shady transaction. It was a whole system. A siphon hidden in plain sight, buried under jargon and smiley face emails. Dozens of transfers routed through fake companies with vague missions and no public record of work delivered. Whoever had orchestrated this thought they were bulletproof. That no one would look close enough, that no one could. But now they had a problem. Me. I knew what documents auditors asked for. I knew what internal controls we were supposed to have. I wrote some of those policies. I wasn't guessing, I was remembering. I opened a new Excel file, labeled it Schematic Internal Flow, Do Not Delete. I charted the vendors by quarter, matching them to expense codes, dates, even the digital signatures on approval chains. Some were copied and pasted. Others had mere data that didn't match up, Word documents created 6 months before the LLCs even existed. This wasn't just unethical, this was criminal. And yet, I didn't call anyone, not yet, because I needed more. I needed to be sure. I needed everything. I pulled up my old contact list. Looked at names I hadn't seen in months, some still at the company, some in adjacent firms. A few I'd worked with during those hellish merger audits years ago. One name in particular caught my eye, Kelly, a forensic accountant I'd once helped untangle a messy vendor issue involving fake invoices. We'd kept in touch. She owed me a favor. I drafted a vague email. Hey, hypothetical question. If someone had vendor invoices that didn't quite line up with payment structures, and those payments went to shell LLCs tied to private properties, what would you do? I didn't hit send, not yet. I saved it in drafts and kept building my timeline, because this wasn't just about proving what happened. It was about why it happened and who stood to gain. And something in my gut told me Martin Laird wasn't the only one with his hands in the jar, so I kept going. Page by page, dollar by dollar, from boxed up nobody to bloodhound with a trail. They fired the wrong woman, and I was about to prove it. I made the call while pacing the hallway of my apartment like a lioness in a cage. My brain had been chewing the same bone for days and needed new teeth. I didn't need much, just a reaction. Confirmation. I told myself it was just a temperature check, but let's be honest, I wanted to see if the ground would shake. Samantha answered on the third ring. Same sweet voice, still with that tight Midwest lilt. She worked in procurement, had since before either of us had gray hair. We'd shared enough late nights over expired vending machine trail mix to know which vendor names were real and which were smoke. Hey, I said casually. Quick question, you remember a company called Alpha Consulting? The silence that followed wasn't casual. She didn't say who. She didn't say, let me check. She didn't even breathe, just a beat too long of nothing. Then, where did you hear that name? She wasn't asking like someone curious. She was asking like someone checking if she needed to shred something. I saw it in an old doc, I lied, voice syrup smooth, just caught my eye, more silence. Then she mumbled, I can't talk about that, and hung up just like that. I stared at the phone, then at the carpet, then at the ceiling. The air changed, thicker, charged, like the humidity before a tornado siren. 3 hours later, the email came. Subject line, just checking in, it was from Martin Laird, my former CFO. The man whose initials were splattered across half the invoices I'd been combing through like blood at a crime scene. The body of the message was short. Amanda, hope you're doing okay. Heard you bought one of the old laptops from the sale. Let me know if you need help wiping it properly or getting it running. Also, if you ever want to grab coffee, it'd be great to catch up. No pressure. M. No signature. No title. No footer with the standard this message may contain confidential information crap. Just plain text friendliness with a side of I see you. I didn't reply. Instead, I shut off my Wi-Fi, disconnected the laptop from everything, pulled the files off onto 3 separate USB drives and stored them in 3 different locations, one in my locked desk drawer, one in a shoebox behind my spice rack, and one tucked into an old CD case labeled Wedding Photos 2009, because I knew no man, CFO or otherwise, would ever go digging in there voluntarily. Then I got serious. Downloaded encryption software, set up a VPN, opened a new cloud account under an alias. I labeled the master folder for Audit Encrypted. Within it, every timeline, every invoice, every W-9 tied to a beach house or a P.O. box or a brother-in-law with a beard and no LinkedIn. I even created a dead man switch, an email set to auto-send to Kelly, the forensic accountant with full access credentials if I didn't log in every 72 hours. Was it overkill? Probably. Did I care? Not one damn bit. Because if Martin knew I'd seen something, that meant someone else had flagged it. My name was probably whispered in some hushed call between board members, or passed along by someone in legal with an ulcer and a burner phone. They didn't know how much I knew, but they knew I knew something, and that, my friend, changes everything. I wasn't just some laid-off admin anymore. I was a liability, a wild card, a risk with legs. They thought they had erased me, flushed me out with the end-of-quarter budget cuts and a thank you for your service plan. But now I was the one holding the match, and they'd just handed me the gasoline. The email hit my inbox like a snake in a bouquet. Subject line, quick catch-up. It wasn't from Martin this time. This was higher, board level. Karen Delacroix, independent director and PR darling. She was the kind of woman whose handshake you'd describe as efficient and whose smile made interns cry on their lunch breaks. Hi, Amanda. I understand you recently acquired one of our decommissioned laptops. There's been some confusion regarding old files that may not have been properly cleared. I also hear you've been reviewing certain internal vendor documents. Would love to chat in person and help clarify anything that might be misinterpreted. Let me know if you're available this week to stop by. Warmly, Karen Delacroix, Board of Directors. Strategic Committee, the way she said misinterpreted made my molars clench. Still, I read it 3 times, then stared at the wall for a solid 5 minutes while my brain mapped out every possible outcome like a chess game soaked in kerosene. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I stood up, poured myself a glass of wine I couldn't afford, and sat back down to write two very important emails. The first went to Julie Cheng, a journalist friend of mine who now wrote for The Ledger, a financial watchdog site that had taken down two CEOs and a hedge fund. We'd done improv together back in the day before she swapped punchlines for Pulitzer dreams. She owed me. I cashed that in. Subject line, something you might want to see quietly. Inside, a brief outline. Carefully worded, no names, just a teaser. Enough to raise her eyebrows without setting her hair on fire. I told her I'd be forwarding some encrypted files, and that she'd know what to do if I suddenly ghosted her. The second email went to Don Weathers, a federal accountant I'd worked with during a nasty IRS vendor compliance audit back in 2016. We'd bonded over stale conference coffee and a mutual hatred of passive-aggressive budget managers. Don was meticulous, sharp as hell, and had a memory like a filing cabinet with teeth. Subject line, hypothetical red flags. I attached 5 files, redacted, of course, just enough to trigger his instincts. I didn't need legal advice. I needed confirmation that what I'd found wasn't just unethical, it was actionable. Both replied within an hour. Julie, holy SHT. Let me know when you're ready to go on record. We'll keep it airtight. Don, Amanda. If even half of what I'm seeing here is legit, this goes way beyond sloppy accounting. We're talking compliance violations, corporate fraud, and possibly tax evasion. Call me ASAP, so I called him. We talked for 43 minutes. I took notes. He flagged several entries as extremely concerning, which is accountant speak for this smells like prison. By the time I hit reply on Karen's email, I wasn't afraid anymore. I was ready. Hi Karen, thanks for reaching out. I did notice a few odd files while setting up the laptop. Likely just leftover junk. Would love to stop by and clear things up. Thursday works. Let me know what time. Best, Amanda, no fear, no panic, just enough sugar to keep them calm and clueless. Then I printed off my summaries, highlighted the juiciest anomalies, created 2 binders, one labeled for Karen, the other for me. I didn't plan to show either, but I wanted them in my hands, just in case. I also re-uploaded my encrypted files to 2 new cloud drives, one under a friend's name, another under a burner account I created using the name of my high school gym teacher. I backed up everything again to a drive taped behind a loose floorboard beneath my radiator. Paranoid? Maybe, but I'd seen how this movie ends when the whistleblower isn't bulletproof. They wanted to talk in person. I'd let them. But I wasn't walking into that building alone. I was walking in with a file that could end careers, and I wasn't sure if the trap was meant for me or if I was the one setting it. The night before the meeting, I didn't sleep. Not from nerves, those were long gone. It was focus. That diamond-cut stillness I used to slip into before quarterly close, back when 1 decimal off could cost someone their job. Back when I was the one they called to fix the impossible. Except now, I wasn't fixing their mess. I was documenting it. By midnight, I'd compiled a polished version of the findings, a curated trail, precise enough to raise alarms but scrubbed of any metadata that could link back to me. Gone were the folder tags, my machine ID, even the source paths. I used a separate laptop, one I borrowed from a neighbor under the pretense of helping with her resume. Uploaded everything to a dead-end cloud server. Compressed, password protected, then sent to a single recipient, Wendell Parrish, CPA, lead external auditor for the firm they'd retained during the last financial cycle. I remembered him from a brutal 2021 budget review, where he grilled the CTO so hard the man spilled his lunch down his shirt. Wendell was dry, ruthless, and allergic to bullshit. Perfect. The email was short, unsigned. Subject, budget plan, incomplete reporting, and potential compliance violations you're being lied to. Attached are vendor records, payment chains, and discrepancies that may constitute fraudulent activity under Section 404 of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. Consider this a courtesy. A. I didn't include my name, didn't need to. The files would speak for themselves. Once the message was sent, I opened LinkedIn. My profile had been dormant since the day I was canned. It still listed me as operations manager, even though that badge had been turned in like a library book they never planned to reopen. I stared at the cursor, hands still for a moment. Then I typed, when a system rewards fraud, the quiet ones build receipts. Hash accountability, hash internal controls, hash ethics matter, no names. No drama, no hashtags like hash karma or hash stay tuned. Just a breadcrumb. I hit post and shut my laptop. 15 minutes later, someone from the board viewed my profile, then another. And another. I watched the views tick up like a countdown clock. At 7:42 a.m. the next morning, I got a text from Samantha. Did you post something? Martin just called an emergency board session. He looked pale, like ER pale. By 9:03, Karen Delacroix's assistant emailed to reschedule our in-person chat for later that week. I didn't reply. They were scrambling. Martin was likely pacing his office, sweat blooming under his Armani sleeves, trying to figure out what I had, how I got it, and, most importantly, who else knew. I imagined the boardroom now, blinds shut, phones silenced, legal counsel grim-faced as Wendell Parrish unpacked the file labeled budget plan shared. Every number they fudged, every LLC they conjured. Every family member turned consultant. It was all there, and they had no idea where the leak came from. They'd underestimated the quiet one. They thought when they locked me out, the story ended. But I'd simply changed chapters and picked up a pen. And this time, I wasn't writing reports. I was writing evidence. The email came with the subject line, formal request for meeting board inquiry. It was from the firm's legal counsel. Not Karen, not Martin, not HR, legal. I opened it slowly, savoring every line like it was the menu at a steakhouse I wasn't paying for. Amanda, in light of recent developments and questions surrounding legacy, vendor relationships, and financial oversight, you're requesting your presence at an internal inquiry with select members of the board and our legal team. You are not under investigation. Your insight may help us resolve a few outstanding concerns. Thursday, 2 p.m. Executive Conference Room A. Please confirm. No threats, no NDA reminders, no talk of alleged findings or unsubstantiated claims. Just a seat at the table they once ripped out from under me. I replied with one word, confirmed. Didn't dress to impress, I dressed like me. Slacks, boots, and a navy blouse I bought back when promotions still felt possible. Hair pulled back. No makeup except eyeliner sharp enough to cut tension. I wasn't there to dazzle, I was there to listen. The lobby hadn't changed. Same carpet that smelled like toner and broken promises. The receptionist didn't recognize me, fresh face, fresh hire, probably told not to ask questions. I gave my name. She clicked something on her screen and nodded like I'd just ordered a latte. Right this way, Miss Taylor. Executive conference room was 3 degrees colder than the rest of the building, like always. It was where ideas came to die and bonuses came to live. Martin was already inside when I walked in. He stood quickly, like his chair had bitten him. Hi, Amanda, he said, too bright, too forced, like a clown whistling at a funeral. He was sweating through his collar. Not much, just enough for the fabric to ripple slightly when he adjusted his tie. Legal counsel sat across from him, stern-faced, neutral, armed with a tablet and a thick manila folder, and next to her, Wendell Parrish. I hadn't seen Wendell in over a year. He looked exactly the same. Stone-faced, steel-eyed, posture straight like the laws of God and Excel themselves held his spine upright. He didn't nod, didn't smile, just watched me sit down. There was a moment of silence, brittle and loud. Then Legal cleared her throat. Miss Taylor, thank you for coming. Before we begin, let the record show that this meeting is being documented and your presence is voluntary. I nodded once. She gestured to Wendell. Mr. Parrish, he didn't waste time. He pulled out a folder, plain, thick, no labels, slid it across the table toward me. Inside, I saw it, a printed copy of the budget plan Q4 file. My breadcrumb. My first clue, the same Excel sheet I had stared at in my kitchen with a glass of wine and a migraine. Next to it, highlighted invoices, redacted bank statements, a map of the vendor shell game I'd spent weeks reconstructing. Wendell said, we've independently verified her findings. No hesitation, no ambiguity. Martin's breath hitched. I could hear it. Several of these payments bypassed required secondary approvals. Some vendors are unregistered. Others are tied to addresses with no corporate presence. The approval trail leads repeatedly to one individual, Martin Laird. He turned toward Martin without expression. We'll be referring this to compliance and potentially federal oversight. Martin opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He looked at me like I had turned into something mythological, like a secretary who had grown wings and claws overnight. But I didn't gloat. I didn't grin. I just folded my hands on the table and said one sentence. Isn't it funny what you find when you clean up after other people? Wendell nodded. Legal said nothing. The moment hung there, sharp as glass. The room didn't explode. No shouting, no tantrums, just the quiet click of the truth landing in full view. I didn't need to raise my voice. The paper had already spoken. Wendell didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He read each line like a death sentence being pronounced in Morse code, flat, precise, final. Vendor ID 4110 Echo Ascend Advisors. Billed $85,000 for mindfulness reset. No documented deliverables. Approved by ML. Vendor ID 3968 Harbor Oak Strategies. Wired $47,300. Registered to residential address owned by a family member of Mr. Laird. Vendor ID 4053 Alpha Consulting. Payment of $19,750 processed without required secondary signature. Approval note per ML processed quietly. He flipped a page, didn't look up. These payments violated Section 7 of the Sarbanes-Oxley Compliance Policy. Lack of oversight, misrepresentation of vendor services, and intentional circumvention of internal controls. Silence. Legal counsel didn't blink. Karen Delacroix sat rigid, one perfectly manicured hand resting on her wrist like she was physically restraining herself from bolting. Someone else from the board cleared their throat, but it sounded more like choking. Martin Laird just stared at the table. Wendell finally looked up and said, there are criminal liabilities here. He didn't direct it at anyone. He didn't need to. The words fell into the room like a match into kerosene. I stood. I wasn't going to give a speech. That wasn't why I came. But when you've spent 12 years picking up after people who cashed bigger checks while playing dumb, you earn the right to say something. So I said the only thing I needed to. I trusted you all. You fired me to protect this. No one answered. Karen looked away. Martin looked like he'd swallowed a pin. Legal leaned in, voice careful. Mr. Laird, we're going to ask you to remain behind for private session with counsel. There it was, the shift, not a scream, not an explosion, just gravity. His name isolated, his title crumbling. Wendell collected his folder without ceremony, already rising. The board members filed out in stunned silence, some with their phones already buzzing, others avoiding eye contact like I was radioactive. But I wasn't toxic. I was done with their lies, done being their scapegoat, done being the invisible glue. I turned and walked out without looking back. Past the receptionist, past the glass doors, past the wall where my name used to hang on a placard that nobody dusted. Outside, the air hit me like a reset button. Sunlight, real, clean air, no filtered AC, no stale carpet glue, just me, free. My inbox still had the LinkedIn views ticking up by the minute. My cloud drive was still active. Julie from the Ledger had already sent a follow-up, let's talk timing. Dawn Weathers had requested a formal statement. The fire was lit and I hadn't even touched the gasoline yet. But I didn't feel rage, not even triumph, just clarity. I had brought them the truth in silence and it rang louder than any courtroom scream. Let them panic, let them scramble, let the empire shake. Because Amanda Taylor, the woman they erased, just rewrote the final chapter. Big thanks for watching, you sneaky seniors. Subscribe to keep the coffee pot brewing revenge. Your ex-colleagues won't know what hit 'em.